Hey guys, I'm Brian Latimer. I'm going to talk to you today about the difference between a spinning rod and a spinning reel and a bait caster. One of the biggest differences is when you look at a bait caster, you're going to have a small little trigger here on the bottom and the reel sets on top of the rod. How do you distinguish whether it's the top or the bottom? The eyes. The eyes on a bait caster is going to be on the top. So is the reel. Conversely, when you look at a piece of spinning equipment, the reel hangs down at the bottom. You don't hold it up like this, but you actually let the reel hang down towards the bottom, and you'll notice the eyes on the bottom of the rod as well. When you're using bait casting equipment, it's better suited for power fishing or bigger, heavier baits. It handles 10 to 20, maybe even 25-pound test line much better than a spinning rod does. The spinning rod, even though you can use heavier gear with it, it just handles lighter lures and smaller line much better than a bait caster does. On this particular rod, I'm using a braid to fluorocarbon setup, which is really good for finesse techniques. With the braid to fluorocarbon setup, I get increased sensitivity. I also can cast my lures, my light lures, a lot further. Another thing you'll notice about spinning gear is that the drag, the setting that lets the line pull off the reel when you got a big fish on, is much smoother with the spinning reel. Since you're usually using bigger line with the bait casting piece of equipment, the drag is not quite as smooth and it's more made to bind up and move a fish and turn it around. While spinning gear is really not a beginner piece of equipment, if you're new to fishing and you're getting your first rod and your first reel, you may find that spinning gear is a little bit easier to use. You don't have to modulate the speed of the line as it exits your reel nearly as much as you do on a bait caster. Let's talk about the recommended sizes. Now there's a lot of different size rods and reels on the market. On my bait casting equipment, what I like to use for rod sizes is anything from that 7-foot mark all the way up to a 7/8 or 7/10. A 7-footer, if you don't have a rod or reel, a 7-foot medium heavy power rod is probably going to be the best rod for you to buy as your first rod and reel. When it comes to spinning gear, it's about the same thing. I like to stay a little bit smaller with my spinning gear. I'll use as small as a 6/8 or 6/10, all the way up to a 7/2 or 7'3" medium power, or maybe in some instances a medium heavy power spinning rod. If I'm using bigger line, I'm going to use a 3.0 or 3000 series reel just so I have more line capacity if I'm using bigger line. As you're shopping for your rods and reels, you're going to notice when it comes to reels, there's a lot of different gear ratios. Now, how do you know what gear ratio you should use for your style of fishing? In my opinion, a good medium is a 7.2 to 1 or 7.3 to 1 gear ratio reel. That'll probably get you through just about any situation, any lure, anywhere you're going to fish. So that's the difference between a bait caster and a spinning rod. If you're new to fishing, I really think you'll enjoy a spinning rod a little bit more than the bait caster in the beginning, but as you move up and get a little bit more confidence and a little bit more skill, the bait caster you're going to find is going to be a lot more versatile.